going on, everybody? Welcome to Cocktails in the War Room, episode 185. And I am taking the show on deployment again. Welcome to the War Room South. We've been trying to figure out exactly how to decorate it. And so this is a work in progress. But as of right now, this is the War Room South. And we're making a lot of tweaks. We're working on it. I need you guys to let me know. Does it sound okay? Can you hear me okay? Is everything good on your end? What's up to Denise? Sean is joining us. Mark is here. Keith is here. Melissa, Elsa's joining us. Lisa's here. Matthew is checking in. Christine, Laura is here. I want to make sure you guys can hear me okay because, yep, it sounds great, says Melissa. All good, says Keith. Mark says it's all good. All right, that's awesome. So, this was an incredibly kind of quick and last minute trip, and definitely not shy on the drama. My flight got canceled at the last minute. And then I got booked on another flight that the airline put me on. And then I couldn't get somebody to pick me up at the airport because my chauffeur was working and wasn't able to get away to get me at the airport. So I actually had to rent a car, and ended up, because of the holiday weekend and all the travel craziness, the only rental I could get was a minivan. So I drove around North Carolina in a rented, ooh, that light is hot, in a rented minivan the last couple days. But it was a really quick trip. So I'll let you guys know. So I'm down in North Carolina, obviously, thus the Marine flag, which was put there very purposefully by my executive producer of the War Room South. But yesterday there was a pretty big change of command ceremony that I got to go to, albeit arriving a little late because of my flight issues. But I actually got to hear the Commandant of the Marine Corps give a speech yesterday, which was really cool. And so it's one of those times where, what's up, Will? Hey, Monica. So, you know, we've talked about a lot of things in 185 episodes of the War Room. And when you are with somebody, you know, and you both have careers and you're going to make things work, you got to travel when you can. You got to see each other when it's possible. And you got to move mountains when one pops up in front of you. And so this has kind of been one of those weeks where having the opportunity to kind of be able to spend a couple days with my family, I had to hop on a plane, and it's been a crazy couple of days trying to make it happen. What's up, Michelle? Hello, Elsa. Laura says you have a chauffeur. Yeah, well, he's a lot of things. The executive producer of Cocktails in the War Room South, also my personal bartender, who I believe is making me a cocktail as we speak that should be being hand delivered very soon. So get moving on the cocktail down there. What's up, Lindsay? Let's see. Rock Chick Lyric joining us. Ash is here. Let's see. Christine says Rockville 5-finger death punch, friggin' crazy. Passed out, got hit. Oh yeah. So Ivan Moody, Thursday night, it was so, welcome to Rockville, an amazing festival, but it's in Daytona. And this time of year in Florida, you never know what kind of weather you're going to get. It was really, really hot. Ivan Moody from 5-Finger Death Punch almost passed out from heat exhaustion on stage, tripped over lighting on the stage, and the laser came up and went across his face, and his eyeball got burned by a laser. He put up video that he filmed on his Instagram. He's got an eye patch that he said he might have to wear it for like a month. So that was crazy. And then really serious thunder and lightning storms went through over the weekend, cutting short Jerry Cantrell's set, cutting short Shinedown set, and canceling Guns N' Roses set. And a lot of people that bought tickets to Welcome to Rockville down at the Daytona International Speedway were really upset, especially because they tried to get refunds. And it's one of those outdoor shows where it says in the fine print when you buy the tickets, this is an outdoor show, an act of God. They were going to have the show through the rain, but any outdoor show, they cannot have it in lightning, because I think a lot of people forget that in a major stadium production like that, there are riggers and people running spotlights that are literally hanging from that metal trussing and all of that scaffolding that builds the stage. Never mind the level of electricity that is already running through a production like that. Then to have tens of thousands of people in the crowd, and heaven forbid the scaffolding or anything in one of those stages gets hit by lightning, and started to collapse it. They just can't carry on a show like that. And so a lot of those outdoor shows, they say, look, you buy tickets, but you're always at risk that because of high winds, tornado, lightning, it's a pretty short list of acts of God that are going to make a show like that not be possible. But yeah, a lot of people were very upset at Welcome to Rockville. And it's a good thing to talk about because Boston Calling is coming up this weekend, and they are calling for some rain and possible thunderstorms this weekend. And so Friday night, Nine Inch Nails is the headliner. The Strokes are headlining on Saturday. And then Metallica is closing out the festival at the Harvard Athletic Complex on Sunday. So depending on if you bought a single night ticket, if you just wanted to go and see the bands on one night, or if you bought a whole festival pass, whenever you're getting ready to go to an outdoor show, keeping an eye on the weather is always something that you want to do, because there is always that possibility that thunder and lightning are going to be part of it. And they're going to do everything they can. It's just like baseball, right? That they'll put it on a weather hold. They'll try to postpone it. But they have got, big giant festivals like that, they've got the money to have the good weathermen. The same thing with the Red Sox or any baseball team, the Woo Sox. They keep an eye on the weather because they don't want anything to happen, obviously, to the players, but they don't want anything to happen to the spectators either. So if you are headed out Memorial Day weekend, you're going to Boston Calling, keep an eye on the weather, obviously, through the holiday weekend, no matter where you're going to be, no matter what you're going to be doing. There's always a possibility in May of just crazy thunderstorms. So what's up, Trina? Joining us, Teddy is here. Did anyone grab for the Cheez-Its on the plane? No. And I got to tell you, because they canceled so many flights, my original flight got canceled. They rebooked me right away. The plane was completely sold out. And, there was a medical emergency on my plane, not me, obviously, but it was very weird being on the plane and having the flight attendant come on and say, is there a doctor or a nurse on the flight? And a couple people got up, they went to the front of the plane. And when we landed, they asked everyone to stay seated because medical personnel were going to come onto the flight and help take the passenger off the plane that was having the medical emergency. And so we had to, sit there, obviously. It wasn't very long because the person was actually sitting up towards the front of the plane anyway. But it was very strange. I mean, we've all seen it in movies, where they get on the loudspeaker on the plane and they're like, is there a doctor or a nurse? And they actually had to do that, which was kind of scary. So what's up? Let's see. Lisa, Melissa says, bad thunderstorms in a tornado ripped through Rocklahoma 4 years ago. That's what I mean. These big outdoor festivals are absolutely amazing, but there is always that variable that there's going to be. I mean, especially in Oklahoma, like they're famous for having just these crazy storms and tornadoes just kind of pop out of nowhere. So be very careful this weekend if you're headed to Boston Calling, or just anywhere you're going outside. Is there a corpsman on the plane? Actually, what's crazy is that I'm actually friends with someone, a Marine, that answered that call on a flight. He was flying cross country. They needed someone that had medical experience. He had medical experience through the Marine Corps, and he ended up saving someone's life on a plane by doing CPR until they could get the plane on the ground. Absolute total hero, was given a medal from the Marine Corps, wasn't in uniform, but was traveling on behalf of his military service. He was flying for training, but he was in civilian attire, and he actually saved someone's life. So, it's one of the reasons why I always talk about our military personnel and first responders as being heroes all the time because just like doctors and nurses, they're never really off the clock. How many times have you heard, of something going wrong and a police officer or a firefighter that was off duty jumped in to help, ran into a burning building they happened to be driving by when they were off duty, delivering a pregnant woman's baby in an emergency on a plane or a cruise ship. We've got these people that are so well trained that have given their time away from their families to get this training, and they don't forget that training. So they're all out there ready to kind of stand up and put their skills to use when they're needed. And those things happen all the time. I know that I know Melissa says, you friends with a Marine? No way. I know. I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by the group of friends that I am lucky enough to call my friends, my family, the people that I have grown closest to over the years, growing up in a military and first responder family as it is, with so many, medical, my dad being a firefighter, my mom being a nurse, just so many members of the military and first responders, just in the family. And then in my, larger group of friends and family, and obviously marrying a service member as well. It just, I'm surrounded by it. Lindsay says, thank you so much for the Slipknot tickets. It was a cool experience seeing Slipknot from my seat. You don't really realize how much is going on the stage with 9 band members when you're on the floor getting slammed into a barricade. I do not envy the sound guy or the sound engineer when Slipknot's recording a record, or their live sound engineer. If you go back and listen to my friend Frank Scambolone, who I had on the podcast, who's the front of house sound engineer for a bunch of different bands, it's hard enough to mix a band that has 4 members in it. But when you are trying to mix a 9-member band, when you've got Craig from Slipknot with all of the sound effects and all of the sound triggers, and you've got Sid with his turntables, and you've got 2 percussionists that are slamming kegs with metal pipes, and a drummer like Jay Weinberg back there, and then 2 guitar players, a bass player, and a lead singer, as prolific as Corey Taylor, trying to get all of those things blended together to sound as good as Slipknot sounds, not only on the records, but live. It's a pretty unbelievable thing. Joshua says, how is your mom doing? So Joshua, I'll just give you the quick rundown. Part of the reason why I decided to literally make this quick trip was obviously, number one, the ceremony that I wanted to attend with my husband. Number 2, the kids are starting to get out of school because they start school a little earlier and they get out of school a little earlier down here. But also selfishly, I took a lot of the advice that you guys have been giving me, all of the amazing comments. You guys are always so sweet and asking about how my mom is, but also telling me to take care of myself. And so, taking a couple days to be able to kind of recharge and to be able to get out of my house, and my mom is home with my sister, and just taking a couple days to just kind of get a good night's sleep. I slept really well, slept late this morning, just to recharge my batteries. I think anyone that's been a caretaker, I think the same could be said for new moms. Anyone that is really in charge of the well-being of a loved one, no matter if that loved one is 2 months old or 80 years old or anywhere in between. There is a reason on a plane why they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help anyone else, because that other person's no good if you're not healthy. And so, taking a couple days to be able to rest and recharge, because mom has not really gotten any better since last week when I talked to you guys about it. COVID really has done some significant damage to my mom's cognitive ability, which was already deteriorating because of her diagnosis. And so it's been really challenging. She is physically healthy, blissfully kind of unaware of what's going on, but as her caretakers and as the people that love her the most, her children, it's made things really difficult because um, she doesn't really understand how much she's lost in the last few weeks. So, Donna, no, I have not gotten my drink yet. Hey, I could really use that drink up here. Um, Michelle says you definitely needed it and deserved it. Never take any day for granted. Be thankful every day, says Hines. Dealing with elder care myself, you need to take time for your own mental health, says Will. My dad got COVID over the weekend, just fatigue, no other symptoms. Mark, that's really fortunate. Keep an eye on him though, because I actually, so totally random, bumped into a girl that I have been friends with since junior high school that just happened to be down here with her husband on vacation. He is a retired Marine and spent a lot of time down here when he was in the Corps. And so they come down here on vacations and go to the beach and whatever. And it just so happened, she texted me, not knowing I was coming down here, and said, in North Carolina, just thinking about you or whatever, because she knows obviously my husband is here. And I texted her and I was like, I'm in North Carolina too. What are you doing? And so we were able to get together, get the husbands together. And so it was kind of hilarious that we bumped into each other. And as we were swapping stories, she told me a story about someone in her family that got COVID, and literally every day the symptoms changed. So one day it was fatigue, then they got a fever for a day, then they had a cough for a day, then they were really, really achy, especially serious ache settling in the spine area for a day. So it's just like we always talk about here in the War Room. Obviously, the symptoms, I think the best description of COVID that I've ever heard is that it targets, oh, pardon me. Thank you, Cocktails in the War Room executive producer for the Southern studio for my personal drink delivery. Cheers, guys. Told you it was coming. But it's something we've talked about on the show so many times, that COVID in so many cases goes after the weakest part of your body. So if there's an injury, it goes after that. If you have asthma, it goes for the lungs. Obviously, in my mother's case, struggling with cognitive impairment. And so that's where kind of the brain fog settled. So this girl's thirsty. Get her a drink ASAP, Paula. Donna says, thank you, Mr. C. About time, Mr. C. Bottoms up, says Penny. That drink is not big enough, says Rachel. Don't worry. So first of all, crushed ice in the fridge, crushed ice in a drink, to me, goat. Crushed ice in everything, fantastic. And a lot of places down here have crushed ice in their drinks. Not just, at bars and stuff, but also like restaurants. I think crushed ice over cubed ice or crescents or like whatever other shape ice, crushed ice is the best. It's so good. Fantastic. So Walter, get the booze, says Mark. So anybody that you hear about that may be getting COVID, because a lot of people are getting it right now. Thankfully, in my case, being vaccinated, I didn't test positive. Thankfully, in my family's case, everyone was vaccinated. So while the symptoms were tough for a couple of days, the recovery was pretty quick. As far as the physical stuff, the fevers, the achiness, the fatigue, the taste and smell returned fairly quickly. Obviously, what's going on with mom, there's extenuating circumstances. So just anybody that that tests positive, just really keep an eye on them, because you might think that they're totally fine. And then the next day they could wake up with a crazy fever or being super achy. So Donna, exactly. Ooh, slushies, exactly. Crushed ice margaritas, so good. Full Fernandez, Southern style, says Eric. David says, sorry I'm late. Where are you broadcasting from? David, welcome to Cocktails in the War Room South. This is my War Room South setup, at least temporarily. We are still playing with the permanent Southern option, because, we know that, at least for the foreseeable future, I'm lucky that my husband is now going to be back in the States after this last deployment. And so I would like to, since I'm able to be mobile, not only with the War Room, but with the podcast and the radio shows, to be able to travel with equipment and to be able to set up a nice little workspace down here so that I can do this a little bit more frequently and to be able to spend a little bit more time with them. So, yeah, we're working on the setup. I need some better lighting. We're working on angles and that kind of stuff. And I am not at a shortage of military stuff down here either. So I think we're going to be able to make a set look really, really cool. But there is also some other stuff, like in my War Room, that we can't put video up on the internet because there's some stuff you just shouldn't put on the internet. I'm not in the basement. They don't have basements down here a lot. So a section of the house has been carved out for me to be able to work. So David says, if you are in Carolina, I bet you can find his truck stop and find him his own 100-ounce mug. Yeah, 100% Brito. You know what you're talking about. If you're mobile, come to Heinz's Country Club. It is possible to be mobile, but it does complicate things because all of this equipment, I have to carry it on the plane. So obviously I leave things here to make it easier for me to travel with my personal belongings, but traveling with the equipment, packing it all up, especially, you guys know that when you get on planes now, that the roller bags, they want you to check them at the gate. And then they show up with your luggage, and I'm not going to put really expensive microphones, mixing consoles, computers, all of that stuff into the baggage hold. It's a reason why I put it in my carry-on bags. So there is, some complication when it comes to trying to, get the equipment around. So nothing is finer than being in Carolina. It's hot as fuck down here today. I was with the kids earlier, and they're teenagers. So, once kids get to become teenagers, you can have a little bit more, colorful language. And I said to them, I said, it's as hot as Satan's butthole down here. And yeah, I want to be sitting in this cocktail right now in the slushy ice because it's so friggin' hot. Okay, so War Room South. I will tell you that being on the air today, I was only on the air for a few hours today, and luckily kind of unplugged the rest of the day to kind of spend some time with the family. And just before the show started was kind of getting caught up with everything that happened in Texas today. For anybody that doesn't know, there was a mass shooting in an elementary school in Texas today. And the shooter, who was 18, was killed on the scene by law enforcement. They have updated within the last half hour that 18 of the students in the elementary school were killed, and 3 adults at the school, including a teacher, were killed. And so it's been a rough day in the news. I didn't really talk about it too much on the air today just because it's just really heavy. One of the senators from Connecticut, who obviously, having Sandy Hook happen in his state, there are a lot of conversations going on right now with lawmakers about, we understand that people are super polarized when it comes to certain topics, certain political points, all of that stuff. But obviously, after what just happened in upstate New York, there are a lot of people that are like, okay, well, can we find some common ground and agree on some things that all sides can agree on? And so, without using the War Room to be a preaching place, but we've always been able on this show through 185 episodes, been able to discuss difficult topics and do it in a respectful way. Obviously, as frequently as these things keep happening, I think it's incumbent on all of us to force our lawmakers to sit down and really figure out, if loopholes exist, how do you close them? You've got one side that's blaming mental health and another side blaming guns. And I think that a rational person could say there's a combination of the two. But I think another rational person could also say, well, if it is a mental health crisis that we're talking about, then you can have a rational conversation about why healthcare reform is required. That if you want to do less regulation of the actual guns, then we need to do something to make healthcare more accessible and more affordable, because navigating the healthcare system, which is something that I am learning a lot more about because of my mom. And we've talked about this in the past, the episode where I actually talked to you guys about my mom's diagnosis. My sister and I, and obviously our extended family, have been doing a lot of research when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. The predictions for Alzheimer's and dementia, because the three contributing factors besides genetics that really feed into early onset dementia are lack of sleep, poor diet, and stress. And if that doesn't represent or describe all of our lives to a certain extent, you're just fooling yourself. And the predictions that we are seeing is that Alzheimer's and dementia will be the leading cause of death in Americans by 2050. And so taking the gun argument off the table, taking gun control and all of that off the table, I can tell you from personal experience recently navigating the health system on behalf of my mother as her advocate, this country is not prepared for Alzheimer's and dementia to be the leading cause of death in America by 2050. We simply do not have the health infrastructure in place. We do not have the long-term care facilities in place. We do not have the number of caregivers. I'm not even talking about nurses and home visiting nurses. I'm talking about the caretakers that are there to help them bathe, cook their meals, supervise them, keep them from wandering, communicate with them, keep their brains functioning, go on walks with them, to try and keep these people home, because we don't have the facilities for them all to not be home. And so when we're talking, to go back to what happened in Texas today, we're also having a mental health crisis where we've got all these 18-year-olds, which is exactly what happened in upstate New York, and which is exactly what happened in Texas today, that are, they haven't even, they've grown up in a time, unprecedented time. Obviously, I can't imagine how I would have been at 18 years old. I was fortunate to grow up in peacetime, relative peacetime. I can't imagine what I would have been like having grown up in this modern era, post 9/11, to have grown up in a time where terrorism, war was something you literally saw on television every day. School shootings, something you see on TV all the time. And this generation, people 20 years and under, how this is all affecting them, albeit passively, that they're just being exposed to it without even trying to see it. And they're growing up with a device that gives them all of the world's knowledge and all of the news at the touch of a button, unfiltered. So if we're going to side on things being a mental health crisis, then it is incumbent upon our lawmakers to make the health system function in this country. And if we are going to have a firearm discussion in this country, then it's incumbent upon all of us to ask our lawmakers to figure out, if there are people that are mentally disturbed, how are they getting guns? And if they're getting the guns legally, why haven't they been identified as having a mental health problem? And how are we not fixing this? I think every one of us here in the war room is a rational human being that can sit down and be practical and pragmatic and say, look, none of us just want there to be this free-for-all. We can all admit freely that something's going on and we need to figure out what that is. And, Donald, metal detectors in schools, that's great for the kids that are going to go there. But like we saw in Sandy Hook, he showed up at the school, shot through the glass door, and walked through. A metal detector is not going to solve that problem. So, we've had Parkland Elementary. There was an armed guard at the school who did not respond on campus to the shooting. And I don't know what happened to that law enforcement officer. So when you talk about more police in the schools, I believe the Texas Attorney General today is talking about more training for the teachers and arming the teachers. They're, somebody, Annette's saying they can make the guns at home. The people are 3D printing guns, which, this ghost gun conversation that people have been having about how they're making guns that are completely untraceable. There's no serial numbers. They're not going through gun dealers. These are not straw purchases. These are people that are making guns. What was the Clint Eastwood movie with John Malkovich in it, In the Line of Fire? And Clint Eastwood is the Secret Service agent, and John Malkovich is the guy trying to assassinate the president. And he makes a gun out of a polymer that is not detected in a metal detector. I know I'm presenting more questions than answers. Obviously, I'm sitting here in the War Room South. I don't know enough about mental health. I don't know enough about the gun laws, especially in 50 different states with 50 different sets of gun laws. But I think for us, as we sit here on a Tuesday night gathered together in a respectful way to have an open dialogue about these hard things, is to demand that the people that we elect to put there, hey, how about you guys don't take your summer vacation? How about you guys sit down in a room and hash something out and come up with a plan? And maybe this side gives a little and this side gives a little, and some kind of compromise can be found. Because what's happening is the blame is driving people to the outer parameters of what's going on, and things are getting worse. And what's happening and what's being done is clearly not working. And so, what's up, Danielle? Don't apologize for being late. So, just, I remember being on the air the day that Sandy Hook happened. And I also remember the day of the marathon bombing. Part of the reason that I was down at the finish line of the marathon that day was that there was a tribute to the Sandy Hook kids and teachers, because you'll remember there were 20 kids and 6 faculty and staff. So at mile marker 26 on Boylston Street, there was a tribute to the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre. And that was one of the reasons that I was at the finish line that day broadcasting in 2013, was to be able to go down and see the memorial to the Sandy Hook victims. And if you haven't seen the video of the senator from Connecticut on the House floor today, or on the floor of the Senate today, his speech, it's been a long time since I saw a lawmaker on either side of the aisle give a speech that wasn't lobbing insults across the aisle. Where he was legitimately asking a room full of elected officials, what is our role here? What are we doing here? If it's not to solve the problems of the people that elected us to be here in the first place. And I thought it was an incredibly mature response that for the first time in a while, there was a lawmaker that just wasn't blaming the other side for the problem at hand. So, like I said, I wanted to address it. It's not something I wanted to dwell on with the whole show, but obviously when something this horrific happens, just days after a racially motivated shooting at a supermarket in a neighborhood where that supermarket, which is now closed, was really the lifeblood of that community. The term food desert is something that is so crazy to me, that there can be parts of cities and towns in the United States where your options for being able to have access to healthy food, groceries, that you only have one option. And so when that closes, the crisis in that community is so horrifying. And they lost employees of the store. And so the store is still closed because they're doing a crime scene investigation. The story that the senator from Connecticut told about how the children that were in Sandy Hook, I wanted to share this with you really quickly in case you didn't hear his remarks today. The children that were in the Sandy Hook school the day of the shooting, obviously going through mental health counseling and continuing their education, one of the things that they were told is every class had a safe word, that when the images of that day came into their head during the day, during class, that they would say that word. Everyone knows what that word meant, and that attention would be paid by the mental health professionals in the school and the teacher to talk the student through the memories that they were revisiting in real time, sitting in class. These kids are suffering from post-traumatic stress, but they're children. And so they were given these safe words. And so he said that in one of the classes at Sandy Hook, one of the classrooms used the word monkey. And he said to hear multiple times a day in that classroom children saying the word monkey this many years after, because they were having a visual or something reminded them of what had happened. And this is years later. And so what he said is the kids in Sandy Hook will never be the same. And these kids in Texas today are never going to be the same. And I just thought it was a really interesting coping strategy, because we all hear about these shootings in real time. And then, I haven't heard a follow-up to the Sandy Hook shooting about how these kids that were in the first grade and kindergarten when the shooting happened are now continuing on with their education, but still dealing with these things. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, that these kids were given a word that was their way to be able to communicate and have everyone know what it is that they needed to communicate. And Michael, I believe it was Murphy. It wasn't Blumenthal. I believe it was Murphy. I'm almost positive that it was one of the senators from Connecticut. But I believe it was Murphy. One of you guys can Google it. I just thought it was very interesting information to follow up on those kids, because I think all of us at one time or another have wondered how the kids that survived Sandy Hook or any of these other incidents that have happened, how they move forward with that. I think anyone that's ever had access to a member of our military or a first responder, I think a lot of people don't really give enough, we automatically assume post-traumatic stress. It's such a term that you associate with being a veteran of war. But, the firefighters and police officers that responded to the Marathon bombing, same kind of thing. There are healthcare providers that have post-traumatic stress dealing with, mass casualty things that were accidental, massive acts of God, weather, tornadoes, fog on a highway causing a massive accident. And hold on. You guys are telling me that I'm freezing in the Wi-Fi. All right, am I back? Can you see me now? Signal is coming and going. Wi-Fi seems okay on my end. I don't understand why that's doing that, but sorry guys, I don't know what's going on. You keep freezing up, says Ed. Got the lost live signal. Signal is coming and going. Drink, drink, drink. Okay, fine. Walter, get the pipe and fix this, says Eric. There were thunderstorms rolling through here earlier today, actually. I don't know if that's the cause of it, but anyway, so just to finish on this point so we can move on with the show, because you guys have stuff to do. I think right now we're asking a lot of questions, and I think less finger pointing and more rational dialogue and willingness to compromise is the only way that we are going to move forward, not only with this issue, but a lot of the other issues that we're all facing right now, because I think that we're at an impasse trying to do anything else. I just think it's, we're asking a lot of really tough questions. And obviously the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, and the different result's not coming. So obviously something needs to be done. Let's see, being 37, it's like seeing 9/11 in high school. I mean, Mark, anybody that's a little bit older, I remember being in school and every classroom in Massachusetts was watching the Space Shuttle Challenger because there was a teacher from Massachusetts on the shuttle. And an entire generation of school kids, especially in Massachusetts, I remember the teachers scrambling to unplug those televisions and to try and explain to classrooms full of kids what we just witnessed, which was the instantaneous death of 7 NASA astronauts and the first civilian in space perish alive on television. So you can only imagine what it's been like. I mean, that was a defining moment in my education. I remember it like it was yesterday. Obviously, anybody growing up post 9/11, if you were in high school on 9/11 or even a little younger, kids from 9/11 to now, they've grown up with this as normal. There's nothing normal, nor should it be perceived that any of this is normal. So we got a lot of questions. The good thing about the War Room, as you guys always say, and as I point out and want to give you credit every week, is that there are a lot of differing opinions here, but with very rare exception, are there insults or blaming, because we've all found a place here where we're able to discuss things and have a rational conversation. And what I see a lot in the comments with you guys is, at least offering up suggestions. Whether other people in the comment thread, like someone says metal detector in schools, and then someone says, well, how do we tackle the problem with like a carbon fiber weapon or, something like that. So like we're at least, rather than somebody going, what are you, stupid? Like you guys are so amazing in that way, where we're this little microcosm of our society where we're able to offer up support, suggestions, and to be respectful. So Keith says, yep, was in the 8th grade when the Challenger happened. Danielle says, I hope something changes because it really needs to. It's just heartbreaking. Donna says, I'm home. I was homesick the day of the Challenger, and I had a parent there to explain it. Yeah, we've all had these moments in our lives where we'll never forget where we were. And I think, unfortunately, this younger generation has this incredibly long list of things that they will remember exactly where they were when it happened. And that's unfortunate. And especially, spending time with the kids that I have in my life, trying to really lead with empathy and to kind of learn what their perspective is on things. Because how could they possibly look at the world, because they don't have the life experience that we all have as adults. So, listening more than talking sometimes is helpful as well. All right. Well, I am in the War Room South, and I do not have my bartender book handy. However, I thought that I would do a little research and find a cocktail recipe that made sense for tonight. So rather than dig out the book, I put it on the screen for you guys. This drink is called the Thirsty Marine, and it's a mixed drink. It comes from Cocktail Builder online, and it's 1/4 ounce of triple sec. It is a 1/2 ounce of peach schnapps. It is 1/4 ounce of Absolute vodka, a 1/2 ounce of Jägermeister. Okay, I'm with you. It's a 1/2 ounce of 100 proof Southern Comfort peach liqueur, 4 ounces of Red Bull, and 2 ounces of orange juice. Pour all of the ingredients over ice in a highball glass, stir, and serve. This is your cocktail for tonight, guys, the Thirsty Marine. And there are a lot of things in this recipe that scare me. I will tell you that the Red Bull and the vodka together tastes like a sweet tart. So if you add stuff like triple sec and the peach schnapps and the orange juice, this drink is a recipe for disaster. Here's the recipe if you're feeling brave and you want to tackle it. Brutal. All right, let's recap last week's podcast episode 102 of the Mistress Carrie podcast, featured Chris Motionless from Motionless in White. And if you are not a fan of Motionless in White, maybe you've never heard of the band before, maybe you are a fan, I thought it was a really interesting conversation. Chris and I had a great discussion about just the songwriting process. And I thought it was really interesting the way that he was able to be kind of self critical and critical of the process, about feeling rushed to release a record, feeling like he maybe wasn't empowered enough to want to change some things in the moment, and that he has a lot of regrets about the second record of the band. And I thought he was really candid and talking about it, and talking about working with a producer and how it can be hard if you work with someone that's not necessarily respectful or understanding of your own process. And Ed says, great podcast last week. Michael says, screenshot it. Yeah, if you screenshot the drink recipe, you guys got to share it. I'm sure you could find the recipe. It's on Cocktail Builder. That's where I found it. And it's called the Thirsty Marine. You can go back, and Donna says, go back and pause the video. Danielle says, I wish that Motionless in White would come to Boston. I'm sure they're going to. They just released new music, and every band is out on the road. You guys know how crazy busy the events calendar on mistresscarrie.com has been. So I would expect sooner than later that they're going to be in town. But finding it hard to watch Carrie in the Sox game at the same time. Keith, can you give me an update on the Sox game? Because I don't have it on. Melissa says it was great. He was very intellectual and very down to earth. He was incredibly down to earth, really sweet. I loved our conversation, since he grew up just outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania, about kind of self-analyzing people from the East Coast and the Northeast specifically, and how that affects the music that we make, how it affects how we look at problems. He was just a really great guy. Like I said, I had never really spent a lot of time talking to him before. Was super excited that he accepted my invitation to come on the show, and I would have him back tomorrow. Absolutely loved having him on. Melissa says it was a great podcast. I read that one already. Sox are up 8-0. That's amazing. Dropout Kings are playing Monday in Tampa. Love them, says Christine. Top of the fourth, 8-0. Red Sox are winning. Thank you guys for the update. Lindsay said, I met Chris a few years ago at a show. Just a super nice guy. Really cool. So if you haven't checked out episode 102 yet, Chris Motionless from Motionless in White was my guest last week. Pause for cocktail consumption. Okay, this week, new episode coming out at midnight tonight. Episode 103 of the Mistress Carrie podcast is going to feature George Pendergrast from Dishwalla. Now, George Pendergrast is the original drummer of the band. Some of the guys in Dishwalla met when they were 13 years old. That's how far back the band goes. He did take a break from the band for a bit because of injury, because as we talk about in this week's podcast episode, the drummer specifically needs to be in really good shape, has to be able to function. We, in the conversation we had talked about a guy like B.B. King, who well into his 90s could sit in a chair in front of a sold out crowd and shred the shit out of Lucille. But for a drummer at that age, you look at a guy like Mick Fleetwood that is still playing the drums, but, a band like Metallica is going to be limited based on the physical ability of a drummer like Lars, because the drumming of Metallica, the music is so fast and so hard hitting and so complex in places. It's really important for the drummer to be able to keep up. And so George and I had a great conversation about that. We also had a great conversation about what it's like for a band who had been together for a while to just all of a sudden be incredibly famous the way that Counting Blue Cars in the 90s just took off for Dishwalla. And he was incredibly open and honest about how the band dealt with that fame, how management and the record label dealt with that fame, and then the letdown of not being able to top a song like that, and how a band, it's one thing to be a band before superstardom, but staying at the level of superstardom is incredibly difficult. And then, when I talked to Dee Snider or JJ French from Twisted Sister about what happened when grunge showed up to the 80s hair metal bands. George and I had kind of a similar conversation about what it was like to um, get hit by Napster in that time, that Dishwalla had just hit the stratosphere, but the way technology was changing, that they were one of those bands that had Napster and illegal downloading kind of not happen when they did. They would have sold so many more records because they had so many radio songs. But when the records don't sell the way that they did, there were so many bands when the record labels consolidated that lost their record deals. And there's a whole kind of era in recorded music, a whole generation of bands that were lucky enough to release one album, one song, two songs, and then they got hit with this technology wall. And we had a really great conversation about that. So that is this week's episode. He was really cool. He was supposed to be out on tour with Dishwalla, but he actually was battling COVID and was at home in isolation when we recorded the interview. And he was just so awesome. Such a great guy. We also talked about how he was able, through the lockdown, he is a drum instructor, and how he was able to continue that part of his career during COVID, being able to teach kids drum lessons. And he teaches at a like a music camp for kids, teaching them percussion and drums. And so just even if you're not a fan of Dishwalla, which you don't have to be, a really interesting conversation about, musical genetics, inherent musical ability, that his kids, when they were young, he tells a really funny story. I don't want to tell you too much, but he tells a really funny story about how his son just was able to jump behind a drum set and play it inherently. It came from somewhere. And then one day his daughter was like, yeah, Dad, I can do that too. And jump behind the drum set and could play just as well. And I was like, atta girl. Because he never taught his kids how to play the drums. They just always could do it. And George was kind of like that as well, that he showed an ability and a drive, really wanting to play, yearning to play the drums at like 3 years old. And the way he tells the whole story in this episode about the way that his father reacted to that request at such a young age is a really interesting conversation. So I can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. Episode 103 of the Mistress Carrie podcast goes live at midnight tonight. So if you subscribe to the podcast, you are also going to get access to the sit reps, which it's a little bit hard for me to produce sit reps while I'm on the road. Normally, you get a sit rep Monday through Friday. Every weekday, it's 5 minutes long. All of your rock news, music headlines, entertainment updates. This week, the sit rep's going to return on Thursday. Obviously, I'm not in MCHQ, so it's a little bit harder for me to produce everything. But the podcast is going live tomorrow. The sit rep will return on Thursday. But normally, you get the sit rep every weekday. And once again, all of the places, and this isn't even all of them, but anywhere you want to listen to a podcast, if you search the Mistress Carrie podcast, you will find this icon, and you know you're in the right spot. But anywhere that you want to listen to a podcast, you're going to be able to find me. And once again, thanking our neighbors to the north in Canada, because they are holding strong as the number 2 country listening to the Mistress Carrie podcast worldwide. And I will tell you that on the back end of the Mistress Carrie podcast, working with my friends at Pantheon, we're going to be doing some stuff behind the scenes, especially being able to track a little bit better all of the international listening. And so we're kind of in the works on making some changes to the way that we kind of get this information compiled. So I'm hoping in the next couple of months, I'm going to be able to give you a little bit more in-depth of reports on exactly where around the world people are discovering the Mistress Carrie podcast. All right. I just want to run down some of the shows that are coming. Like Royal Blood is at the House of Blues tonight. Godsmack at the MGM Theater at Fenway coming up August 27th. That is the brand new venue behind Fenway Park. It holds about 5,000 people. I heard it is gorgeous, and I'm sure is going to sound amazing. Ghost and Mastodon, along with Spirit Box, are going to be down in Rhode Island at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. I know a lot of you guys were able over the weekend to go down and see Slipknot and the Knotfest Roadshow down there. So Ghost, Mastodon, and Spirit Box are going to be down there September 12th. The Tattoo the Earth Festival, August 17th, is going to be at the Palladium. That's Anthrax, Black Label Society, Hatebreed, At the Gates, Municipal Waste, and Forest. I did put in a request trying to get the Anthrax guys on the podcast before this show happens, so that I'm hoping is in the works. Stained is going to be at the Mass Mutual Center in Springfield coming up on September 11th. Also, Shinedown and Jelly Roll with John Harvey are going to be at the Xfinity Center on September 13th. That's going to be the first couple of weeks of September are just out of control between all of the shows at Fenway, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Aerosmith, and then all of the shows that are just happening. We're going to be busy. Weird Al and Emo Phillips are going to be at Indian Ranch on August 5th. Alice in Chains, Breaking Benjamin, and Bush are going to round out the summer concert season on October 8th at the Xfinity Center. Ann Wilson is going to be at Indian Ranch on July 23rd. Aaron Lewis will be at Indian Ranch on September 3rd. Pussifer is going to be at the House of Blues in Boston on June 28th. Joe Satriani is coming to the Orpheum on November 5th. The aforementioned Five Finger Death Punch, who are getting ready to release their new album, Afterlife, coming up in August. They're going out on the road with Megadeth, The Who, and Fire from the Gods. They'll be at the Xfinity Center coming up on September 18th. AWOL Nation at the House of Blues on October 23rd. Froze again, so sorry. Iron Maiden is going to be on the Legacy of the Beast tour at the DCU Center coming up in October. Bish wants to know any more news on Steven Tyler and Aerosmith. The last thing I heard about Aerosmith, besides the fact that Joey Kramer is not going to be playing drums with the band this year, is that the Vegas residency kicks off on June 17th, and that Joe Perry was named last week in testimony by Johnny Depp's former friend, saying that they witnessed Johnny Depp doing cocaine between 2014 and 2016 with Joe Perry from Aerosmith. That's all the updated Aerosmith information that I have heard. So that's all I know right now. Keith, we were talking about Rockville earlier on in the show. You may have missed it. He said they were great, but they only played 3 songs, and then they got pulled off the stage because of the crazy storm. So let's see. Oh, wait, Steven Tyler checked into rehab? I did not see that. I did not see that. No, so I definitely do not have any updates on that. No shows until the fall, so the Vegas residency has been postponed. Things have been a little crazy, and especially traveling last couple of days, so I missed that. So I will do some research and make some calls and find out what's going on with the guys from Aerosmith. AWOL Nation is going to be at the House of Blues on October 23rd. Hailstorm, The Pretty Reckless, The Warning, and Lilith Czar at the Leader Bank Pavilion on July 19th. ZZ Top is going to be at the Leader Bank Pavilion on July 22nd, which, by the way, is the same day their live album Raw comes out. Extreme, who are opening for Aerosmith at Fenway, hopefully still on September 8th, but Extreme are also doing some headlining gigs in early September as well, including at Indian Ranch on September 2nd and Hampton Beach Casino Ballroom on September 3rd. And we already were talking about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, September 10th at Fenway as well. Trina says so many people have been getting pulled into the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. I know, it's crazy. Jim says headed back to rehab after painkillers following surgery. And that happens a lot, and not just with musicians, but anyone that has ever tackled their own sobriety and come out the other side of it, especially if you have a really active lifestyle, or as they get older, there are obviously going to be health issues. Steven Tyler has been very vocal about surgeries with his feet and how, for people that don't have addiction problems, I would cite myself in that, where I am incredibly empathetic to the people where it really is a problem, but I have never had that kind of a problem in my life. I was able to quit smoking. You guys see me having a cocktail here in the war room, but when it comes to drugs and alcohol, it's never been a huge issue for me. But for people that are struggling, that have become sober, to go and have major surgery and then to be given per a doctor the very thing you've been having an internal struggle with because you need it to deal with the pain. I think it's incredibly brave for Steven Tyler not only to be so open and honest about his struggles, but to be so self-aware to say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do this by myself. And to be able to say, you know what, I'm not going to be strong enough to tackle this on my own. I know what a slippery slope this is. I know it's also inconvenient for the rest of the guys in my band. I know it sucks for the fans that have bought these tickets to these shows, but for me, my health, my future, for the band's future, for him to say, I need to take this time to make sure I'm going to come out the other side of that. I give Steven Tyler all the credit in the world. And like I said, I don't know too much about it, but I know that he has been incredibly upfront, open, and honest about these struggles. And so for him to make the really smart decision to be able to be self-aware, to say, nope, you know what, I need to tackle this stuff. I give him credit for that. So sending all of the love to, Steven Tyler and all of the Aerosmith guys, because I know how badly they want to get these shows back in Vegas and to get the hometown show to celebrate their anniversary to happen at Fenway. So let's finish up with the concerts and stuff. Flogging Molly and the Interrupters are going to be at the Leaderbank Pavilion coming up on July 1st. Rob Zombie, Mudvayne, Powerman 5000, and Static X at the Xfinity Center on July 30th. The Stadium Tour coming to Fenway August 5th and 6th. Of course, that's Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett. That show has been more than 2 years in the making. And, all the bands are in full band rehearsals. Phil Collin from Def Leppard saying that they're taking a personal trainer out on the tour because they want this festival tour to do so well this year that they kind of do what Weezer and Fall Out Boy were able to do with the Hella Mega Tour, and to be able to take it worldwide, which is what they're doing later this year. Weezer's going to be in Boston for Boston Calling this weekend, but then to be able to take the Hella Mega Tour to Europe later this year, which is what they're doing, they want to take the stadium tour worldwide, and they need everybody to be healthy to do it. So Collective Soul and Switchfoot are going to be in Indian Ranch on August 6th. And the Black Crowes, which we'll be bringing up in another minute here in the War Room, they're going to be at Tanglewood coming up at the end of June. Blondie and the Damned at the Leaderbank Pavilion on August 14th. Evanescence, who made some lineup changes. They parted ways with their guitar player, Jen Majura. The bass player from Evanescence, who was originally a guitar player, is now taking over playing guitar. And the Sick Puppies bass player is now joining Evanescence to play bass. So there's a little bit of a shakeup in the lineup of Evanescence, who are in full tour rehearsals right now because they're getting ready to go out with Korn. They're going to be at the Xfinity Center coming up on August 26th. And the Bob Saget documentary is getting ready to debut on Netflix coming up on June 10th. The 2-part HBO documentary about George Carlin debuted last weekend on HBO. I have not watched it yet. I heard it is stellar. So if you're looking for something to binge watch over the next few days, you can check that out. Want to remind you guys about the 4th annual 100 FM The Pike Hair Fest, which is happening at Indian Ranch coming up on July 30th. And then on the 31st, the Pike presents Tesla at Indian Ranch. So that's going to be a crazy weekend. And then speaking of Indian Ranch, the Rock Fest is happening September 10th. So the Pike is going to be at Indian Ranch a lot this summer and fall. These shows are going to be absolutely a blast. So if you don't have your tickets yet, especially for this one, spandex pants, retro concert shirts, mullet wigs, bandanas, get to all of it. Bret Michaels from Poison putting up a tutorial on how to properly fold a Bret Michaels bandana on his Instagram, if you haven't checked that out yet. If you've always wondered how he did it, go to his Instagram. And I want to remind you guys as well, if you got the bikes on the road, starting 11 to 1, coming up Saturday, June 25th, I'm going to be at American Harley Davidson in Leominster. It's their open house. They are open all day long. They're doing oil change deals. You can get your bike inspected there, but I'm going to be there from 11 to 1. The details are on the event calendar at mistresscarrie.com. So definitely get the bike out. If you don't ride, take the car, bring the kids, whatever, but come and hang out with me. I'm going to be there from 11 to 1 on Saturday, June 25th. Obviously, you guys, I am not at home, so I was unable to check the mail. So I apologize. So mail call returns next week to the War Room. And also want to remind you guys that as it gets hot, as we approach a long holiday weekend and the unofficial start of summer, that tank tops are available in all sizes back in stock, both ladies cut and standard cut tank tops in both black and white are available at mistresscarrie.com. And you can also get a lot of the Mistress Carrie merchandise at Joe's Albums on Main Street in Worcester as well. All right, we're talking about the Black Crows there. If today is your birthday, first of all, happy unbirthday to you, Keith. But if May 24th is your birthday, you share it with now 81-year-old legend Bob Dylan. You also share your birthday with Patti LaBelle. The late, great Cynthia Plastercaster, who just died recently, was born on this date. Heavy D was born on this date, and Rich Robinson from the Black Crows also celebrating his birthday today. So if today's your birthday, cheers, and happy unbirthday to Keith. Keith says, definitely need to see you fuckers soon. Dina says, 10-0 Red Sox now. Fantastic. It's Tommy Chong's birthday today. How did I miss that? Thank you for the heads up, Eric. Happy birthday to Tommy Chong, which, by the way, he makes an appearance in the Cypress Hill documentary that premiered on Showtime on 4/20. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a great documentary if you're looking for something really cool to watch. But Cheech and Chong make a cameo appearance in a Cypress Hill documentary. Who would have thought that was going to happen? Okay. Want to say what's up to everybody with a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass. I learned, thank you to Danielle, who sent me a private message, and she was like, can you do me a favor and check into my Backstage Pass, because I haven't been seeing your posts over the last few weeks. And so I went in, and something happened in the back end coding of the Backstage Pass. And so for the last couple of weeks, you guys haven't been seeing my posts, which is really weird. So I've been putting pictures up today, put up an update yesterday. I'm trying to figure out when we're going to do our live stream. Normally we do them on Sunday nights, but obviously not going to do that over a holiday weekend. But when I get back into MCHQ, we're definitely going to have to settle on a date when we can get together for this month's private live stream, which is one of the things you get with a Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass. You can also submit podcast interview questions. You get travel blog updates. You get early access to event tickets. You also get exclusive concert ticket giveaways. So I know we've been giving some things away here in the War Room, but the Backstage Pass holders get way more access to tickets. Right now, Backstage Pass holders have access to Pussifer tickets, the tickets to see Rob Zombie, Mudvayne, Powerman 5000, and Static X. You also have access to go and see Korn and Evanescence as well. So if you're a Backstage Pass holder, you are very aware how to get a hold of those tickets. So log into your account. If you don't have a Backstage Pass, you can go to patreon.com/Mistress Carrie or go to mistresscarrie.com and click the Patreon button. Let's see. When are we all getting together? Keith, I'm working on it. Heavy D, now we found love. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for quoting the lyrics, Eric. I appreciate that. Ryan says, what's up, War Room family and Carrie? Old School Boy is back. Nice to have you back. Have you had Danielle in the War Room yet? No, you're talking about Danielle, Radio Danielle. Danielle has been so busy leading tours in Italy and Iceland. I think this is like her new line of work now, and it's kind of hard to get her on the continent long enough to get a date where she wants to record, but it's going to happen. I love her too much to not have her as a guest. All right, want to remind you guys about all the places you can find me online. It doesn't matter where in the world I am, including the War Room South. You can find me everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Cameo, YouTube, Patreon, obviously, and the home base for everything, mistresscarrie.com, which you guys are very well aware of. So happy early birthday, Kevin. Donna says happy birthday. Ryan says, what's up, Penny? So there you go, guys. I think a pretty successful first launch of the War Room South. We're tweaking everything down here. Got to work on some lighting. Obviously, got to check out the Wi-Fi, see why we're having some Wi-Fi issues. I will get the executive producer of Cocktails in the War Room South in on that to find out exactly what's going on and find out what's going on with Kevin Barbary has been on, Brett. Not only has he been in the War Room, but he was on the podcast as well. you got to go back through the old episodes. But we had a really great conversation. And he's got an amazing studio, and he joined us in the war room so that you guys could see his studio as well. Where in the world is Mistress Carrie? I know you saying that. Exactly, David, you know. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I know we started the show off with some pretty serious subject matter. Thank you guys for hanging out with me every Tuesday night. I love the fact that I'm able to take you with me wherever I go. And after 185 episodes, it's pretty crazy. So cheers to you guys. Happy I finally got my cocktail. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Go Sox. And Keith says the War Room South, aka the basement. There's no basements down here. People don't have basements here. It's like not a thing. I've been noticing a lot of different things that are different down here. The streets are narrow. There's these crazy rain runoff ditches on both sides of the road that freak me the hell out. And nobody has basements. And people use their garages down here for like what you would use your attic or your basement for, like just extra storage. And looking at it from a Northeastern perspective, I'm like, what do you do during a snowstorm? Don't you want to put your car in the garage? They don't get snowstorms really, so they use their garages for like their gyms and storage. Everybody's garages are a disaster down here. So no, I'm not in the basement. There's no basement. So, all right, guys, I will see you guys later. See you next week. The Sit Rep returns on Thursday. And don't forget, episode 103 of the Mistress Carrie podcast goes live at midnight tonight, featuring George Pendergrast from Dishwalla. So, all right, guys, good night. Have a great night. I'll be back in MCHQ before you know it, and back in the original War Room next week for episode 186. Sorry there was no Pug either, but she didn't come down here with me. All right, see you.